Carmen lived a long and difficult life. Her husband was a sailor, and she often didn't see him for long periods, so she practically raised their 4 children on her own. She invested all her strength and energy into her beloved sons and daughter. Carmen's husband died early, and as a sailor's widow, the state provided her with a decent amount of money. Additionally, she received a pension. However, it turned out that all 3 sons, in whom she invested everything she could, grew up ungrateful. They believed that their mother didn't need anything in her old age and took all the money she received, buying her only the most essential products: bread, cheese, pasta, grains, milk, butter, fruits, and vegetables. Carmen didn't complain because she truly believed she needed almost nothing. Her children still meant everything to her. Buy something for the grandchildren, Carmen once said. When her eldest child, Victor, came for money, her sons took turns taking her savings. Certainly, he nodded, preparing to leave. It's just a pity that I hardly ever see them, Carmen sighed. Mom, you know they're always at school. They don't even have time to hang out with friends. And it's not close for them to come to you. I understand, of course. I live on the outskirts, and you're in the center. But sometimes you could bring them over, couldn't you? I miss them so much, the old woman admitted, looking plaintively at her son. Maybe we'll bring them over during the holidays. If we don't go anywhere, Victor rudely replied, quickly pecked his mother on the cheek, got into the car, and drove away. Carmen sighed again. Usually, during the holidays, Victor and his wife and 2 children went abroad. The middle son, Pedro, had no children yet. He and his wife worked constantly, wanting to save money for a new house. The youngest son, Diego, had only recently graduated from university and was not yet married. He was actively looking for a job, and he also needed money. Carmen's daughter, Sophia, studied abroad. She managed to get into a prestigious foreign university on a scholarship. The old woman rarely saw her. Sophia didn't have money to travel home, and besides, she didn't know that her brothers were taking money from their mother and often sent her small sums herself. Carmen understood that if she told her daughter how her sons behaved, the children would inevitably quarrel, so the old woman preferred to remain silent. Family harmony was most important to her. Sophia wrote her touching letters, and Carmen eagerly awaited the end of her daughter's university studies, fearing that she might want to stay there. What if she falls in love with someone and gets married, or she gets a job offer? Then I'll be completely alone, Carmen sighed to herself. She understood that she couldn't rely on her sons. Her daughter was her only hope and support. Sophia wrote that she missed home a lot and wanted to see her mother, brothers, and friends as soon as possible, which somewhat reassured the old woman. Carmen carefully kept her daughter's letters in a beautiful box. The sons came for money and brought groceries once a month. On one of his visits, Pedro took the money and hurried to the airport. He had an important business meeting in another city. He told his mother that his assistant would bring groceries in the morning. However, busy Pedro completely forgot to warn him. In the morning, Carmen tried to call her son, but his phone was turned off. The eldest son, Victor, and his family had gone to the seaside, and the youngest, Diego, had gone to a music festival with his friends. The woman checked the cupboards and realized there were no groceries left. She wanted to go to her neighbor and ask for something, but the neighbor had gone to visit her children. The poor old woman couldn't think of anything better than going to the square near the market. There she began asking passersby to buy her bread. The poor woman felt very embarrassed. Many ignored her, others hurried past, not hearing what she was saying. Carmen was completely desperate when suddenly an expensive Jeep stopped right in front of her. The old woman recoiled in fear when a young, well-dressed man with sunglasses jumped out of it. "Sonora Martinez," he exclaimed. "Is it really you?" Carmen looked at him in confusion. How did he know her last name? "It's me, Manuel," the man introduced himself, taking off his sunglasses. Only then did Carmen recognize him. "Manuel. It's you," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "How you've grown." Manuel hugged the old woman tightly. "What are you doing here?" an astonished Manuel asked, noticing the empty cloth bag in the woman's hands. Carmen began but couldn't continue. She was ashamed of begging like a beggar. "You were probably going to the market for groceries?" Manuel guessed. "Let's go together. I'll help you buy everything and drive you home so you won't have to carry a heavy bag." With these words, Manuel took the old woman's arm and led her towards the market. Carmen felt embarrassed. She couldn't allow him to pay for her, and she didn't have any money of her own. "Manuel, forgive me, I just realized I forgot my wallet at home," the poor woman said softly. Manuel just smiled, not slowing his pace. "It's nothing, I'll pay for everything. It's trivial. But I'll feel uncomfortable taking your money." Manuel stopped to look the old woman in the eyes. "What are you talking about, Senora Martinez? Haven't you done anything for me before? Didn't you feed me lunch every day as if I were your own son? And after all that, you won't let me buy groceries for you?" Carmen took a handkerchief from her pocket and started wiping her tears. "You're such a good, grateful boy," she said, pressing her hands to her heart. She never doubted he would grow up like this. "Let's go, we'll buy everything we need, and I'll drive you home," Manuel repeated, taking the old woman's elbow. He led her carefully, warning her about steps and slopes. Arriving at the market, Carmen and the man walked along the rows, and Manuel bought the very best of everything. "Look, the strawberries are ripe already. I remember you loved them." "But they're so expensive, Manuel," the old woman protested. "Nonsense," Manuel dismissed. "I can afford to buy you what you love. I'd be happy to do something nice for you." With bags full of groceries, the man carried everything to his car. Carmen could barely keep up with him. She felt so good inside. They got into the Jeep, and Manuel confidently drove it through the city streets. "Do you remember where I live?" Carmen asked. "Of course, Senora Martinez. I lived next to you for over 10 years, Manuel replied, sadness tinged in his voice. Carmen nodded. Manuel was the son of her neighbors who lived in the house across the street. They weren't a happy family, they often drank, and then they would start to argue. Manuel suffered too, he was scolded, and his father often raised his hand against him. So the boy would run away from home and hide at Carmen's. He could play with her children all day, and unlike her own sons, he always helped Carmen in the kitchen when she needed it. Sofia also spent a lot of time with them, while Victor, Pedro, and Diego played in the yard, refusing to come indoors. Manuel was completely different, thoughtful and attentive. Senora Martinez, the man said, bringing Carmen back from her memories. How is Sofia? Has she married yet? The old woman looked at the man. He was looking at the road, but she could see he was eagerly awaiting her answer. She's studying abroad. She applied to university herself and got a scholarship, Carmen proudly replied. Manuel smiled. I always knew she was capable, he whispered. Carmen nodded, gazing at his handsome profile. Manuel was driving without his glasses, and now the old woman could see that his eyes were clouded, as if he was somewhere far away, lost in his memories. He turned on the radio, and a gentle melody flooded the car interior. A retro wave was playing. Carmen closed her eyes, and memory carried her back many years. She vividly remembered Manuel as a boy. Yes, she always felt sorry for him when the boy's parents argued. The whole neighborhood knew about their fights. Manuel, the only son, often bore the brunt of it. He would come to Carmen with bruises. As a child, the boy was clumsy and unusually tall for his age. His unruly black hair stood up in a tuft at the back of his head. No matter how he tried to smooth it down, the tuft wouldn't disappear. Manuel had beautiful hazel eyes, shining with liveliness, but sometimes Carmen could clearly see sadness in them. Her sons didn't reject the boy, they let him play tag, hide and seek, and other games with them. However, Manuel preferred Carmen's company. Sitting in the kitchen beside her and helping her with cooking was his favorite pastime. The boy diligently rolled out dough for pies, chopped vegetables for soup, mashed boiled potatoes for puree. Sophia also constantly hovered in the kitchen, unable to tear herself away from her mother and Manuel, with whom she had formed a special bond from the first days. They understood each other without words, and they were very interested in each other. Manuel was naturally curious. He loved astronomy, knew almost all European capitals, and could spend hours telling various interesting facts he learned at school or from newspapers he found near the neighbor's trash bin, Sonora Torres. Knowing that the neighbor boy liked to read, he deliberately left old newspapers for him. Sometimes Manuel got hold of books too, which he read cover to cover, and it didn't matter to him what kind: romance novels, science fiction, adventures, or scientific essays. Sophia listened to Manuel with her mouth open, and Carmen too was sometimes very impressed by his knowledge. Her life became bright and interesting with the appearance of the neighbor boy in it. She and Sophia eagerly awaited Manuel's arrival every day. The boy wore the poorest clothes, a faded t-shirt and worn-out shorts. The sandals, which he never took off, were worn out, and Manuel had almost outgrown them. He constantly stubbed his toes on things, and Carmen even offered to buy him new shoes. But Manuel just shook his head. He knew his father would immediately take the new pair of sandals to the market and sell them. So Carmen found a solution. In the attic, she kept old clothes of the boys, which they had outgrown. She found a pair of worn-out sneakers that once belonged to Pedro and gave them to Manuel. The boy almost jumped for joy when he tried them on. The sneakers were just his size, and he sincerely thanked Carmen for the gift. With tears in her eyes, she replied that it was nothing. At night, Carmen often couldn't fall asleep for a long time, thinking about Manuel's unfortunate fate. Her kind heart ached when she thought about what he had to endure at home. One night, before going to bed, the woman shared her thoughts with her husband, but he just waved off her words. "You can't change anything. The boy has parents. But he's unhappy with them. They mistreat him, and his father even sometimes uses a belt. Still, they are his parents. Besides, even if you wanted to adopt him, we couldn't afford another child. We already have enough hungry mouths to feed in this family," her husband reasonably remarked. "But Manuel eats very little." Carmen retorted. "Look at how skinny he is." This is a pointless conversation. Her husband cut her off and turned to the wall with the intention of falling asleep. Carmen just sighed. Her heart refused to listen to the arguments of reason. She didn't know that another heart in her house was also sighing for Manuel at that time. Sophia was growing up, and Carmen began to notice the way she looked at the poor neighbor with her eyes. It didn't bother her much because she knew Manuel was a decent boy and would never allow himself to hurt her daughter. When Sophia turned 14, Carmen arranged a real celebration for her. She personally baked a cake, decorating it with her favorite strawberries and whipped cream. In addition, she prepared many contests and games for the children, allowing Sophia to invite her classmates and best friends. The girl asked her mother if she could invite Manuel, and Carmen allowed her. On the day of the celebration, Sophia wore a new soft blue dress that her mother had made for her. Carmen styled the girl's reddish chestnut hair into a beautiful hairstyle and adorned it with flowers and ribbons. Sophia looked more than charming, and her eyes sparkled with happiness. Her father had just returned from his trip and brought Sophia a huge teddy bear with a pink heart on its chest. Sophia hugged the bear and didn't want to let it go for a long time. The girl's friends gave her cute trinkets, a mirror in a beautiful mother-of-pearl frame, golden earrings, shell necklaces, and other pleasant little things. Sophia's brothers also dressed up. They ran around the garden in white shirts with turquoise butterflies and black trousers with pleats. Carmen flinched every time one of them fell. She was afraid the boys would tear their weekend pants. Sophia eagerly awaited Manuel. It was evident from the glances she cast towards his house. Finally, the boy arrived. He was also dressed up. He wore a pale blue short-sleeved shirt and slightly short gray trousers, the ones he wore to school. In his hands, the young man held a worn-out book about princesses that he had gotten from a bookseller, a bouquet of wild daisies, and a box of chocolates. He couldn't afford more, but Sophia was very pleased with Manuel's gift. The celebration was a great success. The kids had a wonderful time playing and dancing in the garden. When it got dark, Carmen called everyone inside and turned off the lights. Amidst singing, she solemnly brought out the cake with 14 lit candles. Sophia made a wish, stealing a glance at Manuel, and blew out the candle flames. Carmen began to cut the cake and distribute it to the guests. She didn't notice when her daughter and Manuel disappeared somewhere. "Where's Sophia?" Diego, the younger one, asked 10 minutes later. "Why isn't she eating the cake?" For a moment, Carmen felt a stab of unknown premonition in her heart, but she didn't give it any importance. "Go look for her, son," she replied. Diego jumped up from the table and ran into the garden. Victor and Pedro followed him. And a few minutes later, the peaceful flow of the celebration was disrupted by cries, whistles, and angry shouts. Frightened, Carmen and her husband rushed into the garden to find out what was going on. Sophia sat on the swing with her hands over her face. Manuel stood slumped beside her. Diego was crying, and Victor and Pedro clenched their fists. Their faces were twisted with rage. It wasn't his fault. Sophia sobbed. "What happened?" Carmen cried out, feeling her heart constrict. "Manuel molested her." Victor replied sharply. "That's not true," Sophia exclaimed, pulling her hands away from her reddened face. "We saw everything. You kissed him on the lips," Pedro shouted. Diego cried harder. "What?" Carmen's husband exhaled. "What were you doing, Sophia?" The girl jumped up from the swing and rushed into the house. Carmen stood like a stone. Manuel did not raise his eyes from the ground. "You're 3 years older than her," Carmen's husband shouted to the young man. "How dare you? You wanted to seduce her." Manuel quickly shook his head. "I didn't want to do anything like that. I didn't realize how it happened." Sophia's father clenched his fists and his face turned red with rage. "Get out of my house now, and don't ever set foot here again." He grabbed him by the collar and dragged him toward the gate. Carmen wrung her hands, begging her husband to calm down, but he heard nothing. He threw Manuel outside like a puppy and slammed the gate loudly. "How shameless!" he shouted, and turning to his wife, shouted irritably, "It was you. You took a snake on your bosom. You welcomed him, and now he's got the nerve to go after our daughter." Carmen pulled herself together. "Boys, go to your rooms," she said to her sons. "I'll clean up later, but now I'll go up to Sophia and talk to her. She will tell me what really happened." Her husband gave her an angry look. "I don't care what she says," he said, and added, "I have already said that he will never set foot in my house again. This is my last word. Period." With these words he went into the house. Carmen followed him with a heavy heart and immediately went up to Sophia's room. From behind the door she heard her daughter crying. Carmen knocked softly and entered. She sat down on the edge of the bed and gently stroked her daughter's back. "Sophia," she whispered, "no one blames you for anything. Just please tell me what really happened. Your father thinks Manuel tried to seduce you. Is that true? Answer me, please, it's very important." Sophia lifted her head from the pillow and sobbed. Her eyes were wet with tears. "Mommy, I'm sorry, she whispered. "It's not your fault, I just love him." Her mother ran her hand through her hair, fixing a loose strand. "I know." Sophia sat up, turning toward her mother and holding the teddy bear her father had given her tightly. "I called Manuel to the garden," she confessed. "I asked him to tell me about the constellations. While he was doing that, I couldn't help but look at him with love. And then something came over me, and I kissed him on the lips. He wanted to pull away, and that's when Diego and the other boys appeared. Diego screamed, and then it started. All of it." Sophia sniffled again, a tear rolling down her cheek. Mom, he's not coming back, is he? She plaintively asked, tears welling up once more. Carmen hugged her tightly. I don't know, she whispered. But I believe everything will be okay. I'll try to talk to your father. Forgive me, Sophia repeated. I shouldn't have done it. Carmen hugged her daughter even tighter. It's okay. You're in love with him, after all. He didn't respond to the kiss. Sophia cried harder. Carmen briefly pulled back to look into her eyes. You're still too young, Sophia. It's too early for you to think about love. Manuel is older than you. He understands that. I know, the girl replied through her tears. But I can't help it. I love him so much. Carmen didn't know how to help her daughter. So they sat there, holding each other tightly, until Sophia fell asleep, comforted by her mother's warmth and support. Carmen gently covered the sleeping girl with a blanket and, turning off the light, left the room. In her own bedroom, she tried once again to talk to her husband, but he remained stubborn. With a heavy heart, Carmen went downstairs to clear the table and wash the dishes. The next morning, nothing had changed. Her husband remained adamant. Sophia didn't leave her room. Carmen saw Manuel from the window. His face was pale. He looked at her hopefully, but Carmen sadly shook her head. Manuel nodded and disappeared into his house. A week later, he left, leaving Carmen a short letter in the mailbox. I'm very sorry things turned out this way, Mrs. Martinez. If I could change something, I would. Please give my best wishes to Sophia. I will never forget your kindness. You were the best thing in my life. Yours, Manuel. Reading the letter, Carmen burst into tears. She missed Manuel terribly, his liveliness, and his amusing stories. Without him, life seemed to lose some of its colors. Sophia came down to the kitchen, and Carmen showed her the letter. The girl hugged her mother and also cried. However, there was nothing they could do, and they had to accept the situation as it was. Sophia spent more time studying. Manuel's departure inspired her to focus on her own education. Now the girl had a dream, to enroll in a foreign university and leave, just like her beloved. Manuel's image inspired her to new successes and achievements. In the end, everything turned out the way Sophia wanted. Carmen was very happy, although it was hard for her to part with her daughter and let go of her beloved child. She couldn't help but admit to herself that she loved and cherished Sophia more than anyone else, and her boys seemed to live their own male lives. It was a pity that her husband was rarely home and spent little time with his sons. Perhaps then they would have grown up to be more noble and decent people. Carmen sighed and returned to the present. What was done, the past couldn't be undone. Manuel had already arrived at her house and parked nearby. He helped the old woman out of the car, then took grocery bags out of the trunk and carried them into the house. Carmen hurried after him to open the door and let the man in. When Manuel entered the hallway, he looked around and, sighing, said, "Nothing has changed here. Even the smell is the same. The scent of cherry blossoms. It haunted me at night for so long." With these words, Manuel sighed again. "I missed you too," Carmen admitted in response. The man carried the groceries into the kitchen and was about to say goodbye and leave, but the old lady wouldn't allow it. She sat him down at the table and said, "You're not going anywhere until you've had my pancakes. I remember how much you used to love them." Manuel chuckled. "All right, Senora Martinez. I'm in no hurry." Carmen began unpacking the groceries and putting them away in the cabinets and fridge. "While I cook, tell me about yourself. How have you been? What do you do?" she asked. Manuel smiled. "I've been living quite splendidly," he replied. "I'm doing what I love most in the world." "And what's that?" Carmen asked, taking out a pink mixing bowl from the cabinet. "I've become a chef," Manuel confessed. "When I left, I enrolled in college in the neighboring town. After my studies, I returned here." "Oh, you always loved helping me." Carmen exclaimed, throwing a joyful glance at him. Yes, you've been a great inspiration to me. It was in your kitchen that I realized my calling, Manuel admitted. Carmen felt warmth spread through her heart. She cracked some eggs into the bowl, added sugar, and began whisking the mixture. She enjoyed cooking for someone else. Also, not to boast, but I've become not just any chef, but a real head chef. Manuel continued with a laugh. Carmen smiled. Is that so? Yes. Manuel nodded. And I work at the best restaurant in town. It's incredibly popular. I've been very fortunate. For a moment, Carmen stopped what she was doing, approached Manuel, and put her hand on his shoulder. I'm so proud of you, Manuel, she said. Tears welled up in her eyes. It didn't escape Manuel's notice. He stood up from his chair and embraced the old lady. I think you've been worried about me all this time, he said softly. But now you know I'm doing well. Yes, Carmen nodded. Now my heart is at ease. She returned to the batter, took out a frying pan from the cabinet, and placed it on the stove. I hope being the best chef won't stop you from enjoying my pancakes, Carmen said with a smile. Of course not, Manuel chuckled. Especially if they come with strawberry jam. The old lady looked at the man and noticed a sudden sadness in his eyes. She followed his gaze and saw him looking at a portrait of Sophia hanging on the wall. She missed you terribly too, Carmen confessed. Manuel hung his head. I'm sorry things turned out the way they did, he said quietly. I still feel ashamed. You're not to blame for anything, the old lady replied, shaking her head. She flipped a pancake and cast a sympathetic glance at him. All this time, I've been afraid you might think I took advantage of the situation with her. But I would never. I respected you and her too much, Manuel said. Carmen shook her head again. I've never blamed you for anything, Manuel. Sophia fell for you head over heels and didn't realize the consequences of her impulsive actions. Manuel nodded, sighing heavily. The thing is, Suddenly, Carmen had a startling realization. You loved her too, she exclaimed. Yes, Manuel admitted. I was planning to wait until she turned 18, and then I wanted to ask for her hand in marriage. Carmen couldn't believe what she heard. Is it true, Manuel? Absolutely true, the man confessed. But a lot could have changed in 4 years. Sophia could have become interested in someone else. She was just a child back then. I understand that, Manuel replied. But I believe that we were meant for each other. I planned to go to school and find a good job to support the family. Well, you succeeded in that, the old woman smiled. But I never did start a family, Manuel sighed, not lifting his eyes to the woman. They fell silent for a moment, and Carmen felt that the man wanted to tell her something else. Something very important. I still love Sophia, Manuel finally admitted. I couldn't forget her. At night, I often try to imagine what she's like now. Carmen took another pancake from the pan, turned off the stove, and approached the man. My poor boy, she simply said. She placed a plate of pancakes and a bowl of strawberry jam in front of Manuel. Then she poured him some coffee and sat down next to him. But before the man could even finish his first serving, the doorbell rang. Carmen hurried to the hallway. When she opened the door, she couldn't believe her eyes. Sophia was standing on the doorstep. Mom, thank God you're okay, she exclaimed, hugging Carmen. What are you doing here, dear? The old woman exclaimed in surprise. Her day was full of surprises, and she hadn't recovered from the first one yet meeting with Manuel. Seeing her daughter on the doorstep was something she hadn't expected at all. I came to save you, the girl replied indignantly, brushing her bangs from her face. Mom, can I at least come into the hallway? Carmen felt embarrassed and let her daughter in. Save? She asked. Meeting Manuel had helped her forget about her dire situation she was in this morning, and now the old woman struggled to remember that 3 hours ago she had been begging for alms in the square. I never thought my brothers were such low, vile, and dishonest people. Sophia angrily blurted out, throwing her bag on the floor. Carmen lowered her gaze. You know everything? She asked in a subdued voice. Thank God, yes. Sophia replied, unbuttoning her jacket and casually hanging it on a hook. Early this morning, I was beside myself. A strange anxiety was driving me crazy. I called you a dozen times, but you didn't answer. Then I called Pedro, and he suddenly remembered and accidentally let slip that he forgot to leave groceries for you. He swore he would call his assistant right away, but I didn't trust him anymore. I made him transfer me your savings and money for a ticket, and he couldn't refuse me. I flew to you on the next flight. I was afraid you were on the brink of despair or already starving to death. As she said all this, Sophia gestured desperately and wrung her hands. She kept trying to hug her mother. It was obvious she was really worried. Carmen listened to her daughter, simultaneously feeling a whole kaleidoscope of emotions: confusion, pride, shame, joy. She remembered that she had forgotten her phone on the bedside table in the morning. She had been so preoccupied with the lack of money and groceries. You're so brave and real, Sophia, she said, embracing the girl, and quickly added to reassure her daughter, I'm fine. I was helped. At this word, Carmen hesitated and, gathering her courage, said, I was helped by Manuel. Upon hearing this name, Sophia turned pale. What did you say? Manuel? That Manuel? When the old woman nodded in response, the girl staggered and nearly fell. Only now did Carmen realize that they were still standing in the hallway. Sweetheart, why are we standing here in the hallway? Let's go to the kitchen, he's still there. Upon hearing this, Sophia frantically rummaged in her purse for a mirror and lipstick. Carmen smiled and said, You look beautiful. Sophia nodded excitedly and followed her mother into the kitchen. Manuel stood up in amazement when he saw her. Without taking his eyes off her, he thought she looked even more beautiful. Sophia also silently looked at him. Then the ice broke, and the young people hugged. I missed you so much, Manuel admitted. I missed you too, Sophia replied shyly. Forgive me for everything. Manuel affectionately ran his hand through her hair. And you forgive me for leaving. Sophia felt like she was about to cry. Fortunately, Carmen invited them to the table. Why are you standing there? The pancakes have already cooled down completely. The young people sat down at the table, and for a moment, there was silence in the room. Everyone was nervous. However, a moment later, Manuel began to talk about his work, and Sophia about her studies, and it seemed to the old woman that there had been no years of separation. Everything suddenly fell into place. She felt full of strength and joy again. The woman skillfully fried pancakes, and only one thought troubled her. Carmen kept remembering her daughter's bitter words. I never thought my brothers were such low, mean, and dishonest people. Sophia's angry and disappointed voice echoed in the old woman's head again and again. It was as if her daughter sensed her state and, interrupting herself mid-sentence, looked anxiously at her mother. And how long have they been taking your money? Sophia abruptly changed the subject, asking Carmen. The woman paled. She didn't want to tell the truth at all. Tell it as it is. Don't cover for them, Sophia insisted persistently, and Carmen gave in. Almost 4 years. Since you left, she confessed. What? And you've been silent all this time? Sophia jumped up from her seat as if intending to rush to her brothers right away. However, catching Manuel's puzzled look, she calmed down a bit and sat back down. But, Mom, how could you? Why didn't you tell me right away? Carmen looked down, pretending that there was nothing more important right now than clearing the dirty dishes from the table. I just didn't want to worry you. And I didn't want any fights with your brothers. But they didn't deserve anything better. How could they treat their own mother like this? Sophia couldn't calm down. She got up again and started pacing around the room. Manuel silently watched her, unable to insert a word. He saw that both women were emotional and didn't want to interfere in their family affairs. But I really didn't need anything. I had enough of the groceries they bought for me. Carmen tried to justify her sons. Mom, don't you understand? This is not normal. Sophia exclaimed in frustration. At this point, I'm the only one who doesn't understand what's going on here. Manuel decided to intervene. He looked questioningly at Sophia and then at Carmen. The girl sat down at the table and began to explain. My heartless brothers have been taking my mom's savings for 4 years, leaving her groceries in return, she said. Manuel's eyebrows shot up in surprise. What? That's downright despicable, he exclaimed angrily, just like Sophia had a minute ago. That's what I'm saying, the girl confirmed. I had no idea about any of this. By the way, did they also take my money, Mom? Carmen was flushed with embarrassment, and Sophia didn't need an answer to understand everything. They are such. The girl didn't finish her sentence, not wanting to upset Carmen, who was already pale enough. Manuel stood up in agitation. I will go to them and talk to them, he said firmly. They must understand that treating their mother like this is unacceptable. But Carmen took his hand and gently sat him back down at the table. Manuel, none of them are in town right now. That's why I was at the market square. I was trying to beg for bread from passersby, Carmen confessed. The young people exchanged glances. Poor Mom. Sophia exclaimed sympathetically. Sonora Martinez. Why didn't you tell me anything right away? Manuel scolded Carmen. I couldn't, she confessed. I was very ashamed. I swear, this won't happen again. Manuel said angrily, and Sophia nodded decisively, agreeing with him. Carmen didn't know what to think. She certainly appreciated the care and genuine feelings of her two most beloved people, but her heart ached when she thought of her son's heartlessness. Carmen blamed herself for this. Perhaps she should have talked to them more about kindness and compassion, setting an example for them. But had she ever been cruel to anyone? Carmen couldn't recall anything like that. Sophia unexpectedly approached her mother and hugged her shoulders. Mom, sit down, I want to talk to you about something, she said. Carmen obediently sat, not knowing what to expect from her daughter's words. Sophia sat down next to her and began to speak. In my university, I am highly valued. I'm almost done with my degree. They already trust me to give lectures to the freshmen. So, as soon as I get my diploma, I'll become an assistant at the department and continue my studies to become a professor. Carmen felt her heart skip a beat. Her daughter's news both delighted and saddened her. So, her fears weren't unfounded. Sophia would stay abroad, and she, Carmen, would be condemned to lonely old age. Sophia noticed that her mother had turned pale and hurriedly took her hand. Mom, calm down, I haven't finished yet. I want to take you with me. You'll like this cozy little town. Carmen looked at her daughter with doubt. But, Sophia, how can I move? What's stopping you, dear? The girl asked. Carmen glanced around the kitchen. I've grown accustomed to this house. I've lived here for 40 years. Sophia nodded. Of course, Mom, but you're getting older and you need care. And who will take care of you here? My brothers have already proven that they can't. By selling this house, you can buy a very nice place there. Despite her doubts, Carmen suddenly felt that her daughter's words were touching her heart. She suddenly felt like she wanted to change something. How strange, I never even thought about moving before, flashed through the woman's mind. By the way, after selling the house, you'll have money left, and you could even go on a trip. Sophia said. Carmen's head was spinning. But I've never traveled anywhere, she confessed. I doubt I would dare to do such a thing. I'll take you wherever you want to go, Manuel suddenly said. And I won't take your money. Sophia and Carmen looked at him with surprise and admiration, but before they could say anything, Manuel added, and you, Sophia, will come with us. right? Sophia smiled, feeling tears welling up in her eyes again. With pleasure, she said. Young people looked into each other's eyes, and Carmen distinctly felt that the bond established between them in childhood had not disappeared anywhere. They still loved each other. Suddenly an unpleasant thought came to Carmen's mind. And what about the boys? They won't let me go, she murmured quietly. Sophia took her hand. They'll have to accept it, the girl said firmly. 3 months later, despite her son's protests, Carmen moved in with her daughter. Sophia helped her buy a small cozy house not far from the forest, where there was a beautiful lake. The old woman was very happy. Her daughter visited her every day. One day she came not alone, she brought Manuel in her expensive Jeep. Carmen was so glad to see the man that she lost her speech. How did you end up here, Manuel? She finally asked. Manuel came to visit, Sophia replied joyfully. Her eyes sparkled, and she looked very happy. I promise to take you wherever you want. Manuel laughed, hugging the old woman tightly. Then he turned to Sophia and added, but since your exams are coming soon, we'll wait a bit, and for now, I'll choose a nice apartment for myself in the city center. What? Sophia was surprised this time. But you said you came for a short time. I like this little town. Besides, there's a very good expensive restaurant here that I've already visited. After looking at my resume, they said they'd be happy to take me on as their boss. Sophia jumped for joy. Seriously? Wow. Manuel hugged her and unexpectedly kissed her on the lips. Now I won't go anywhere without you, my dear, he whispered. I promise. How long I've been waiting to hear those words, the girl confessed and kissed him back. Carmen smiled and, when they finally let go of each other, invited the children into the house. She baked pancakes again, and the young people immediately pounced on them. Carmen watched as they laughed and smiled at each other, imagining that her dearest dream would come true very soon. She already saw herself sitting in the living room and reading kind children's tales to her grandchildren. Carmen closed her eyes for a moment and felt absolutely happy because the closest people were by her side. Dear viewers, if you enjoyed the story, please support the video by liking it and leaving a comment. Thank you very much.